Hello to everyone online right now. Hi. Welcome to today's Know Your Fertility Wellness webinar. My name is Pei Fen, and some of you may know me through radio. I am a radio DJ at MediaCorp radio station, yes, 933, yes, 93.3 FM. And tonight, I'm very honored to be here to be hosting this webinar. And we are going to learn so much, okay? The webinar will begin shortly, so do bear with me while I make some announcements. There will be a Q&A segment during the webinar, which is at the end. But at any time and point where you have a question in your mind, a burning question that you want to ask any of our experts or myself, you can always post the questions and we will address them later on at the end of the webinar. And last Friday, we featured fertility experts from KKH and SGH. You may view the recording on the I Love Children Singapore's Facebook page. Tonight, we will be featuring experts from Thomson Fertility Center, Thomson Chinese Medicine. Okay, I'm going to be doing a little bit of overview of our webinar tonight. So there will be 5 parts, actually 6 parts, including the Q&A. The first 5 parts will be sharing from me as well. So the first part will be my own sharing, my personal journey, when the second pregnancy doesn't come easy. So I'll be sharing my story with you. And next will be Dr. Janice Tong. She will be sharing the difference in fertility treatments, some of the options available and when to go for it, etc. And next we have Dr. Balaji. He will be taking us on an insightful trip into the IVF journey with the IVF lab facts speech. And next topic is boosting fertility with TCM. And our TCM physician from Thomson Chinese Medicine, Ms. Xia Ai Wei, will be sharing with you how you can boost your fertility with TCM. And last but definitely not least, we will address the psychological aspect of trying to conceive, staying positive while trying to conceive. And Ms. Frances Yeo, our psychologist, will be giving us more advice. Something very important is the feedback form. Please complete the online feedback form at the end of this webinar. 35 participants will be randomly picked to receive a point-of-care international goodie bag worth $23 each, consisting of 8 ovulation test strips and 2 pregnancy test kits. Term supply. Okay, so remember to complete the feedback form. We want your feedback, all right? And we want to give you the goodie bag as well. And of course, we want to remind you that if you are married and planning for a baby now or in the near future, do visit www.ilovechildren.sg and sign up to receive a fertility health check or traditional Chinese medicine fertility consultation by December 10th this year. All right, and you could receive one of the 200 fertility health checks from Thomson Fertility Center. There are other prizes as well. Okay, there's also a fertility support group. Okay, if you need peer support while trying to conceive, this is very important. You can join I Love Children's fertility support group and ask questions anonymously, all right? Or you can share your personal experiences with others. I also want to remind you that you can go to www.ilovechildren.sg today to sign the I Love Children Parenthood Pledge. There are also gifts for you, okay, and terms apply. And if you want to know more about I Love Children and all these webinars or other events that are going on, or perhaps you have you want to read about other people's journey or advice from experts, you can always go to Facebook, Instagram, as well as TikTok. Yes, I Love Children is on TikTok as well, at I Love Children SG for all updates. Okay, I Love Children SG, at I Love Children SG. All right. And Know Your Fertility Wellness 2021 is organized by I Love Children, supported by Thomson Fertility Center, Thomson Chinese Medicine, KK Women's and Children's Hospital, Singapore General Hospital, APRW, and Made for Families. Before we begin tonight's webinar proper, we actually want to invite you to answer some questions, all right? There are some icebreaker questions that we want you to answer to get to know you better. As you can see right now on your screen, there are some questions, 7 questions for you to answer. And we do hope that you will take some time to go through them, answer them, so that we can know who we are speaking to, who I'm speaking to. And yeah, we want to get to know you better. Okay, so tell us whether you're a lady or gentleman, whether you're trying to conceive, or how long did it take for you to have a baby? Okay, these are a few questions. And we see some answers coming in already. Thank you so much. Keep answering the questions. And don't forget, okay, to also fill up the feedback form at the end of tonight's webinar. And once again, actually, we really want you to go for your fertility health check, okay? So remember to visit www.ilovechildren.sg. Okay, I see the answers moving. We have many participants who are answering the questions. Thank you so much. We see an overwhelming number of people, 87% so far, trying for a baby. I want to say, 加油! And yes, trying for a baby is, well, a journey worth taking. Okay, we have many women. Okay, let's take a look at all the answers, okay? We have many ladies. We have some gentlemen. I believe we have more. Maybe some of you are shy to answer. Okay, and we have couples as well. How many of you have gone for a fertility health check before? Oh, actually, well, more people have never gone for a fertility health check than those that have gone for one. So this is a interesting statistic that we can take note of. And go to www.ilovechildren.sg because you can sign up for your fertility check. Okay, how long do you think you need to try before getting pregnant? Most of you said within a year, okay? And actually for many of you who are watching right now, how long did it take for you to get pregnant? Most of you actually answered still trying. Would you consider undergoing assisted conception procedures if you have challenges? Yes, many of you said yes. All right, so I think we are off to a good start. Our experts know you a little better, and so do I. So without further ado, we'll begin tonight's sharing proper. Once again, I want to say good evening, and I hope this Friday night you are feeling all right and comfortable together with your loved ones. And my name is Pei Fen, and as I've said, I'm a radio DJ at MediaCorp radio station Yes 93.3. Some of you may have tuned in to me before, saw me host before. I'm a mother to 2 active boys. One is 6, and one is just turned 1 year old. And I'm going to be starting tonight's webinar by sharing my personal journey. So the topic of discussion for me is when the second pregnancy doesn't come easy. How should I begin? All right, I got married in 2014, and my husband and I had our first child pretty quickly. So we felt very lucky and blessed because it didn't take us very long to have our first child. But after that, I learned what is secondary infertility because it took us a long time before we had number 2. If I were to think about it, I think we started to try for our second child when our first child turned 3 years old because we wanted to space, I wanted to space the pregnancies out about 3 years or 4 years. So when we started trying, we didn't think much. We thought because the first pregnancy came easy, so maybe the second one wouldn't be too much of a problem, but we were wrong. So we tried for a year and nothing happened. And from what I knew back then, the general advice is to do something about it if you have been trying for a year, especially for older couples. So we weren't exactly young. And so we thought, okay, after a year, let's go do some checks to make sure that nothing is wrong. And so my husband and I went to see a gynae who's also a fertility doctor. And from the checks, I found out that one of my fallopian tubes was blocked. So I think that was one of the main reasons why we couldn't get pregnant. And when I found that out, of course, I felt inadequate. I felt like it's my fault, because it's me, right? So for a while, I felt a little bit dejected. there was a little bit of a psychological battle there. But of course, I told myself, okay, it's all right. And under advice from the doctor, we decided not to do any surgery yet, but we started taking pills, making changes to our lifestyles. We also started to see a Tcm physician to get some traditional Chinese medicine help. So she administered some herbs and also suggested that I take my basal body temperature, do some charts. And we made changes to our lifestyle, like I said. For example, we ate healthier, we exercised more, which is, all the good things that we should be doing. So, but we were not as conscientious before. So we did that. We cut down on social drinking. Yeah, and made some major changes to our lifestyle. In terms of work as well, because I hosted the morning show, which is very taxing for me. The morning radio show is every weekday from 6 to 10 a.m. So it was really, really tiring. So I requested to be taken off that show so that I could get more sleep, more time to rest. And after about 1.5 years of trying, still nothing happened. And so we decided to get a second opinion. We went to see another fertility doctor. And that's when things started to change. He suggested that I go for a surgery to unblock the fallopian tube. And we were about to proceed with the surgery when I found out that I was pregnant. You can imagine how happy I was, right? How happy we were. But sadly, that pregnancy didn't last. Just shy of 3 months, I lost the baby. And you can again imagine how we were disappointed, discouraged, having tried for so long. And then we saw a little light of hope, but it went away. But the main thing, now in retrospect, I feel that it gave me even more determination to try because I knew that my body could do it. I can do it. We can do it. So even though we were very sad, it gave me courage to go through with the surgery to unblock the fallopian tube. And shortly after that, I got pregnant again. And now I'm happy to say that I'm mother to 2 crazy, active boys who drive me crazy, but I love them so much. So I think maybe if you know me through my radio shows or my social media platforms, you would know that I'm not a person to share a lot of private affairs publicly. But tonight, I decided that I think I should share this with all of you, especially with you who may be experiencing challenges trying to conceive. Because I feel that, I hope that with my sharing, it will give you some courage and also it will encourage you to keep on trying. Yeah, so I think the takeaway from my sharing is don't give up. Go for your fertility check, www.ilovechildren.sg. And also, you can try different methods, different ways to make changes to your lifestyle to make it more conducive for conceiving. And it's not just the women, the men have to do their job as well. So I hope my sharing is, in a way, a good way to start tonight's webinar. And I guess it's enough from me. Mine is very personal sharing because I'm no expert. So I think now it's time to hand it over to our experts to share their knowledge with you. Okay, up next we have Dr. Janice Tong. She is the consultant ONG at Thomson Fertility Center. She has extensive experience in managing a wide range of gynecological conditions and antenatal care, including high-risk pregnancies. Her clinical and academic interests include subfertility issues and pregnancy-related complications. She's also married and has 2 children. So let's give a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Janice. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for the invitation to speak at this webinar. And also, thank you, Pei Fen, for sharing your personal journey. I think one of the messages that you mentioned, which I think is very important, which I would like to emphasize to all the couples out there, is really not to give up and to keep trying. So today I'm supposed to talk about the fertility health check and various treatment options that couples may have when they're facing problems with trying to get pregnant. So first of all, in order to understand about the fertility health check, I think it will be a good idea to understand how pregnancy is conceived in the first place. So with that, looking at the home, yes. If you will refer to this chart here on how natural spontaneous pregnancy occurs, essentially there must be hormonal communication between the brain and the ovary in order for the body system to regulate and cause ovulation to occur about once every month. And in a natural cycle, during ovulation, one egg is released usually. And when the egg is released, there's a 36-hour window for this egg to meet the sperm and be fertilized. And this would take place in the tube. And so during this ovulation window, it is critical that the egg is surrounded by a maximum concentration of sperm, which has to basically swim from the vagina up to the tube. And so in this manner, fertilization occurs, and then the resultant embryo, which is what happens after the sperm fertilizes the egg, the embryo needs to travel through the tube into the womb cavity and implant to cause pregnancy. So anything that hinders this pathway would make it difficult to get pregnant. In the first place, even with this pathway, if everything is working properly, our human fertility, our efficiency, the rate that fertilization occurs is not very high, which means that in a natural cycle, if everything is okay, less than 1 in 5 or about 1 in 5 couples may get pregnant within that cycle. So in that sense, it is not very, very efficient. And about 80% of couples, if they have no issue, will get pregnant within a year. And about half of the remaining will get pregnant within the second year. So this is where what's the timeline we are looking at in general. So some of the problems that can occur in this pathway include a hormonal imbalance, where the brain and the ovary, the hormones are not functioning very well, and therefore no regular ovulation occurs, and so the egg cannot come out. There are other problems where the tube is blocked so that the sperm cannot meet the egg. There are problems where the sperm is not, there are not enough sperm and not strong enough swimmers that can reach the egg. And so in older ladies especially, where the egg quality is rather poor, and therefore it's very difficult for fertilization to occur, or even when fertilization occurs, the resultant embryo is not normal and therefore does not result in pregnancy, or even if it results in a pregnancy, may lead to a miscarriage. So then there are other problems that might hinder implantation. So for instance, the womb is not healthy. So either it is swollen by adenomyosis, or there are polyps and growing within the cavity, which are small little non-cancerous tumors. So when is it a good time to do a fertility health check to look for these problems? So the thing is, most couples, they can be physically fit, and they can have these underlying fertility issues because a lot of them don't have symptoms. So you can have you can be walking around with a low sperm count, and you can also be having endometrial polyps without any symptoms. So, well, a good time to go for a fertility health check in general will be when you are trying or intending to start a family. But even when you're not intending to start a family, when you're just maybe about to get married, or just after marriage, it may be a good idea to do a fertility health check so that you can understand if it is a bad idea to delay starting a family or postponing the time, because there might be some fertility issues that needs to be addressed. So so that would be a good time in general. Young ladies who have symptoms of very painful menses, cramps, or for other reasons, who have visited a specialist in women's health or gynecologist, may also ask questions about how their condition impacts on their future fertility, so that they get a better understanding if there are things that can be addressed. Sometimes there's a window of opportunity to get these problems addressed first, and therefore make it have less impact on their fertility in future. Okay, so the main treatment options for these problems that I've highlighted after a fertility health check can be discussed with you by your doctor. So these are the main modes of treatment. There can be surgery done to enhance your natural fertility. So for instance, in Payfan's case, to unblock the tubes, as well as treatment of ovarian cysts or removing polyps from the cavity. Subsequently, there's other methods such as ovulation induction for those ladies who are not ovulating regularly. They may be amenable to ovulation medications, either in the form of oral tablets or even injections. And the other fertility treatments include IUI, or intrauterine insemination, or artificial insemination, where the sperm is concentrated and injected into the womb so that it's much closer to the egg and can surround we can increase the concentration of the sperm around the egg at the time of ovulation. And lastly, there's IVF, or intracytoplasmic sperm injection, which is also otherwise known as Icsi, which Dr. Balaji is going to share more on.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Janice. Okay, you have any questions for Dr. Janice? You can start posting them now. Okay, we'll answer them later. Yes, speaking of IVF, we have the expert in the field with us tonight. He's Dr. Balaji, and he's going to be taking us through the IVF journey. Dr. Balaji is the chief embryologist of Thomson Fertility Center's IVF lab. He has 27 years of experience and has trained many doctors and embryologists on IVF lab techniques. So, Dr. Balaji, now is your time.
Thank you, Payfan. Thank all of you for joining this webinar with us. Okay, I'm going to talk about what happens in the IVF lab. So what do we do with the eggs and sperm? So once a patient is actually ready for egg collection, the patient comes to the IVF center, then the lab gets ready for the egg collection. So we have to welcome the eggs. So we prepare some plastic dishes and some nutritive solutions, what we call as media. All these are prepared the day before egg collections. And the next day is the egg collection, and we call it day 0. The eggs are collected, and you can see the picture labeled as egg, which has a central dark spot. That's the actual egg, surrounded by nutritive cells, which are supplying energy to this egg. And later, this egg may be processed or not processed, depending on what kind of insemination will be done. And in conventional IVF, there will be a lot of sperm, like hundreds and thousands of moving sperm, will be inseminated with this egg. And when it comes to the conventional insemination, only motile sperm can be effective. There is another way where there is not many number of moving sperm available from the husband's sperm sample. We can go for a method called Icsi, or intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where the nutritive cells of the egg should be removed, and we have to ask the husband to process, to submit the sperm sample. We process this sperm sample. The first window shows the sperm sample under the microscope, where you can see some of them are moving and some of the sperm are not moving and some of them are abnormal. And we have to isolate all the good swimmers. And in the second window, you can see that almost 100% of them are moving very well. So we have to pick up this sperm and do Icsi. So when it comes to Icsi, we have to pick up a motile sperm, and then we have to slash the tail so that it doesn't move anymore. Pick up this with a small, fine glass needle and bring it to the egg and inject it into the egg. So you can see the needle carrying the sperm going through the egg and aspirating some of the part of the egg, what we call a cytoplasm, to make sure that the process is going on well. And the sperm is released into the egg. So this is intracytoplasmic sperm injection, or Icsi in short. So then the inseminated eggs are left in the incubator for next 18 to 20 hours. Or sometimes we do it even 16 to 18 hours. And we look at these inseminated eggs to see whether they are fertilized. In the second window, you can see the top egg having 2 circles at the center. That's considered normal fertilization. The one below showing more than 2 circles, so that's considered abnormal. So anything other than 2 circles, which are actually the nucleus, one comes from the sperm, one comes from the egg. So after this, again, we put them back into the incubator and leave them undisturbed for another 24 hours. The next day morning, which is day 2, the embryo is supposed to be at 4-cell stage. Then another 24 hours, it is supposed to be at the 8-cell stage. On day 4, it has to be at a stage called morula, where all the cells fuse together. Then on day 5, it becomes a blastocyst. Blastocyst is a ball of cells. It has, you can see the rim of cells in the periphery, which becomes the placenta, and the conical cell mass that is present inside the embryo, that becomes the baby upon transferring this embryo to the uterus. So at this stage, we decide whether we can go ahead with transfer or cryopreservation. Next. So depending on the cell stage and when we are going to do the transfer would be done. The embryologist will load the embryo into the catheter, a plastic tubing, and it is passed over to the gynecologist like Dr. Janice. Then they put it into the uterus. So remaining embryos, the supernumerary embryos, can be frozen and kept in the liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius. So that's what we call as cryopreservation, and we store them until they are required again. In some cases, the embryo transfer may not be done, so all the usable embryos will be frozen and they will be kept inside the storage tanks. And after embryo transfer, about 2 weeks later, the patient has to go for a blood test to check whether she's pregnant or not. If she tested positive with the blood test, then she will come back for a scan in another 2 weeks' time where the pregnancy is confirmed. So that's the total IVF journey.
Right. Oh, thank you. That was it was like a science lesson for me. Thank you so much, Dr. Balaji. Okay, next up we have something that I was pretty familiar with for a while because I took traditional Chinese medicine for an extended period of time to try and get things going, make things better. Boosting fertility with TCM. So we will hear from Ms. Xia Aiwei. Aiwei Yishi is a fully registered TCM physician with the TCM Practitioners Board. She is also the head of Thomson Chinese Medicine. Ms. Xia has special interest in the use of acupuncture in Chinese medicine to help women with fertility issues and postnatal recovery. All right, so we will now hear from Aiwei Yishi.
Thank you, Pei Fen. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Yeah, okay. So my segment tonight will be sharing with all of you on how TCM can boost your fertility health. And not many people know that actually TCM can help you in this trying to conceive journey. Most people are aware that Chinese medicine consists of long hours of brewing medicine for cough, cold, for chronic conditions. But when it comes to fertility, not many are sure how it can work. Next. So for fertility, usually it starts with a couple consultation together with the physician. And it would be good if you have a fertility assessment report. And I just want to reinforce what Dr. Tong said earlier, to go for an assessment early. I think that when we go for an assessment, it's not to say that we have a problem, but I would say that it is more like collecting data points about yourself and your spouse. And we are all into data nowadays, isn't it? I know many of us use those fertility apps, and it's always interesting to look back on the past history to see trends, to see what are the changes, whether we have been ovulating, etc. So fertility assessment is definitely something that is useful even at the start of your fertility journey. And if you do have one of these reports, you can bring them on your first visit to see the physician. And it definitely is provides important information. But other than that, the physician will also look out for other wellness issues that is inherent in both you and your spouse. Because unlike mainstream medicine, which is very specific and focused on reproductive organs like your hormones, whether they're cysts growing, fibroids, etc., TCM adopts a more holistic approach and trying to identify, could there be any issues in your lifestyle? Could there be any issues with your diet? What are some of the wellness things that you can do to achieve a balanced constitution that provides that conducive environment for natural conception to take place? And when it comes to treatment modalities, there are two primary modalities. One is acupuncture and one is Chinese medicine. Acupuncture is the one that most people have difficulty understanding because it involves the concept of energy that is not seen, that is not tangible. So a lot of times when patients ask about acupuncture, number one is how does it work? Okay, so I will explain to them in our bodies are many channel ways, pathways, or if you like, you can call it the expressways in your body that carries energy and blood to the different parts of your body, to the different organs. And with acupuncture, that involves using very hair-thin needles, very thin needles, stimulating at different points that is pertinent to your constitution, we can unblock some of this energy flow and thereby improving circulation. So a better blood flow to your ovaries will help, and the egg quality and better blood flow to your womb can help with the lining that is important during the implantation period. So, and for Chinese medicine, most of you are familiar, but something that is very new is that most TCM clinics now have moved on from raw herbs, using raw herbs that you have to brew. Now we are using mostly powder, which is equally efficient, equally effective as the raw herbs, because some people identify like, oh, you know, raw herbs are more effective, but that's not true. This powder or microcapsules forms are very convenient and are equally effective as well. So this powder is easily, you know, you can easily prepare, just dissolve in warm water and to take it 2 times a day. So this is what's usually required. And usually when we prepare a concoction for patients, we not only look at the medical condition, for example, a lady with PCOS or a lady with endometriosis, that's part 1 of the prescription, and part 2 will look at the body constitution, because 2 women having the same issue, for example, 2 women having PCOS will receive very different prescription depending on their physical constitution as well. And in Singapore, in the last 15 years especially, when TCM becomes accredited practice, we see more and more TCM support for couples who are going through IUI or IVF. Yeah, so, and how this works generally is we will get couples to come in at least 3 months before they decide to embark on their procedures to get them familiarized with the TCM treatment and also to prepare them. And how is this preparation done? Is generally through weekly acupuncture, and if necessary, to take some herbs as well, because most patients nowadays, they come with different issues, you know, other than fertility. They might have gut problems like bloating, indigestion, or stress issues that affect their sleep, their emotional wellness, that can create an imbalance in the constitution. So this is when the acupuncture and Chinese medicine can work concurrently in the shortest time possible to prepare the couple. And once the couple enters into the IUI or the IVF process, where doctors start to give you drugs for stimulation purpose, we usually will withdraw the Chinese medicine and just depend on acupuncture itself to help to support the whole process. For example, during stimulation, we will work on stimulating the kidney energy to boost the ovarian function. And for implantation purpose, then we will focus more on the liver and the spleen energy, where it helps to create a more conducive environment for implantation to take place. Yeah. Ethan?
Right. Thank you so much, Icsi. I think it helped that I really like Chinese herbs. Some of my friends are afraid of the taste of Chinese herbs, so sometimes they will think twice before going to a TCM physician. And for those of you who are wondering if acupuncture hurts, it doesn't hurt at all. I mean, it doesn't hurt at all for me. I'm sure it doesn't hurt at all for most people, right?
Yeah, so some people have the misconception that if it hurts, then it's not right. So if it's, or the other way. So yeah, so as Pathan brought up, yeah, most patients actually find the session very, very tolerable and bearable. Yeah.
No, it was very, very soothing. I fell asleep. Okay. Next up, we have, speaking of soothing, and yeah, we want to soothe our nerves as well when we're trying to conceive. So we're going to be dealing with the psychology part of trying to conceive right now. And we have Miss Frances Yeoh, who will be sharing her experience and advice with us. She's a psychologist with over 20 years of experience. She conducted psychotherapy clinics for women who experience stress and anxiety. Okay, so we want to say a big hello to Frances. Hi, Frances.
Hi.
Maybe to ease into this topic of how to stay positive while trying to conceive, Frances, you could share with us the common stress and anxiety that couples go through while trying to conceive.
Okay, thank you, Pei Fen. I think you described it really well at your sharing. I think majority of couples who have been having difficulty conceiving, they feel a sense of frustration, which you've described very well, where you keep trying and nothing seems to work. And when we keep doing something that doesn't seem to work, you feel very frustrated with yourself. And people generally feel that maybe they've done something wrong, or maybe they didn't do something right. So quite common, many couples are at lost. And when you have a medical problem or a problem that you can't solve, you feel a sense of hopelessness, right, as you described. I think a lot of women also feel a lot of guilt, maybe a bit of shame, especially if they're at the childbearing age. And they tell me it's very stressful whenever they go for gatherings, class gatherings, and someone will tell them that, oh, they announce a baby announcement. And there are also some women who develop a lot of stress and anxiety just after attending such gatherings.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I just wanted to add a little bit more. What you were talking about reminded me of when I was trying, and every month when I took the test, the pregnancy test, and you always see just one line. Oh my gosh, the exasperation and the sadness is really real. I mean, now if you take the ART, you don't want 2 lines, but when you take the pregnancy test, you really want the 2 lines to appear. So yeah, okay. Okay, we touched on the common stress that couples and men and women face when they're trying to conceive. What is the sign, or what are the signs that the stress isn't common anymore? It's uncommon, it crossed the limit, and you need to seek professional help.
I think when someone feels very strong anxiety, where there's a rumination, this sort of like an obsessiveness, almost an obsessiveness of like, over control, over, maybe what they have been doing. Guilt, I think when the women start to feel guilt, where it becomes what we describe it as an inappropriate guilt towards a stressful event, or avoidance behaviors, avoiding baby departments, children's departments, not being able to see babies, avoiding people with babies. Those are actually times where it tells us that this person probably needs a bit more help.
Okay, so when it becomes a big part of their lives, when the negative feeling becomes too much, so it's time to seek professional help. And also because the journey to try and conceive is not just a one-person journey, it's obviously a 2-people journey. The importance of spousal support, how important is it?
Yes, I think having kids is take 2 hands to clap, and is a decision between 2 people. So husbands and wives need to have very good communication and support. I think men themselves, although they have to go through some tests, right? What I understand, they do go through some tests. But even those men who are not going through the tests, the frustrations that they describe, having to, go through trying every month, and even having the negative test. I think some men tell me that when they see that the wife only have that 1 line, they get stressed, because it means, oh, I have to keep trying harder next time. Or sometimes they tell me when they go to see the doctor, some doctors say, oh, you didn't try hard enough. And then they get even more stressed. So it's a silent struggle.
Yeah, so it's not just perhaps the women. Maybe, in society we are more, we hear more of women airing their feelings and emotions. But for men, especially perhaps in a more traditional society, men don't really say anything about it, but they all keep it inside, which isn't necessarily healthy as well. So I'm sure there are some ways. Okay, so let's say two people, a couple decides, okay, we want to have kids. What are some of the ways that you would suggest for them to mentally get ready for this journey?
I think reading up about parenting is very important. Not just conceiving. I think a lot of parents, they read a lot of baby books about babies and conceiving. They don't read more than, just the conceiving and baby part. I think it's important for couples to be aware what they're going through, not just the fertility aspect. I think even attending a talk like this is really helpful, just knowing the medical aspects, the process of having to go through, not just the cost, but also the actual procedure. It is actually very tiring, where you have to juggle work and, going for medical checkups.
Yeah. So being in the know will help you a lot in preparing for the journey to try and conceive, I'm sure. So we hope that tonight's webinar will help all of you out there who are about to embark on the journey to try and conceive, or already on the journey, just started or have been on it for some time. No matter where you are, we hope that this webinar is helpful for you. And definitely, if you're watching now, if you have any questions, I'm sure a lot of you have many, many questions. We've received some of them already. So do take the time to quickly post your questions so that we can answer them before the webinar ends. So we want to thank again our 4 experts for sharing their knowledge and advice with us. And okay, we already have some questions right now, so I'm not going to waste any more time. Okay, Dr. Janice, okay, this question is directed at you. Actually, the 2 questions that I'm about to ask are both for you. How long after a miscarriage should a couple try naturally before seeking fertility treatment?
Okay, so this very much depends on how quickly you got pregnant before you miscarried. So if you took a bit longer, then it's obviously important for you to actually go for a fertility health check earlier. But my advice to about trying to conceive again after a miscarriage, you can actually try the very next cycle once once the gynae has given you an all clear that the womb condition is fine and that your menses has returned.
Okay, and there's another question that is similar. We have someone who is watching and she had a miscarriage. She wants to know how to improve her chances of conceiving again.
Okay, so I mean, it will be a bit difficult because I don't have much background of the patient in this case, but basically, depending on how long she took to get pregnant before she got a miscarriage, I mean, some basic checks can be done, such as a thyroid screen or even a basic overall history of her health, her body weight, body mass index, and certain lifestyle habits can be clarified within one consultation with a gynae, so to improve her chances of conceiving as well as reducing her risk of miscarriage again.
Okay, next question, Dr. Balaji. This is for you. Is there a risk of Icsi leading to improper development of the embryo?
Okay, there is always this question that whether this Icsi, which is, we call it as forced fertilization, causes any damage to the embryo or any developmental damage to the embryo or the baby that's going to be born. Initially, there were some reports showing that there are some problems associated with Icsi. But recently, it has been clarified that it's not because of Icsi that these problems occur. Basically, these patients are already having problems. So that is what has been carried over to the child. Because in Icsi, we are actually manually selecting the sperm and then injecting into the egg. So that means that whatever defects that was associated with the gene, it will be carried over to the embryo and to the baby that is going to be born. As such, Icsi does not cause any this kind of damage.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Balaji. Next question is for you as well. Your questions are highly technical. Does the fresh or frozen cycle have a higher success rate?
That's a good question. Initially, we thought that fresh cycles, that is transferring fresh embryos into the womb, gives a better success rate. But of late, globally, there is a changing trend. We see that the frozen embryos are actually giving a better pregnancy rate than the fresh embryos. So it has been shown by many literatures, but the thing here is that still we can't do frozen embryo transfer for everybody. Right? So those whoever had so many embryos frozen may try this, but those who are with only very few embryos available in the fresh cycle, generally we tend to transfer in the fresh cycle itself. But there is a global trend, yes, frozen embryos showing a better success rate than the fresh embryos.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, next, maybe Icsi can address the next two questions. Okay, from a TCM point of view, does drinking tea or cold water reduce chances of conception?
I can see Dr. Tong laughing. Yes, generally tea, okay, so not just tea, there are many food beverages that TCM classifies with different properties. So in general, it's either warm, neutral, or cooling, yeah. So tea falls into the cooling category, especially your green teas. Yeah, so of course, different types of teas, depending on how they are fermented, the properties will also alter. Yeah, but green tea generally is more cooling. So we don't advise patients to overconsume. All right, so we're talking about overconsumption because there are many women who take tea as a form of hydration, means that they don't drink water, but they drink tea instead the whole day long. And that is excessive, yeah. So if we keep to 1 cup a day or at most 2 cups, I believe that's fine, unless patient herself already suffers from cold syndrome, meaning that when you take tea, it makes your gut feel very uncomfortable and you have certain tendency that shows that, yeah, you tend to have a cold syndrome. But I think the best would be to check with your TCM physician because some women are more heaty, so the tea actually works well for them. But in general, overconsumption of cooling beverages not recommended.
Okay. Okay, the next question, actually, I want to say a word of encouragement to the person who posed this question because they have been trying for 11 years. They want to ask Icsi, would TCM be suitable for them because they've been trying for so long?
Oh, yes, definitely. In fact, like very early on in my practice, this couple who couldn't conceive for 10 years, and they actually have gone through all the different treatment, IUI, IVF, etc. And towards the end of the last few years, they actually stopped trying. And when they crossed the 10-year mark, they suddenly changed their mind and said, okay, why don't we give TCM a try? And they came to see me, and even to their doctor's surprise, that they conceived naturally within a year. Yeah, so, but of course, I'm not saying that the success rate is so good for everybody, but as we say in this webinar, don't give up. Yeah, as long as, physically, there are no physical issues, yeah, definitely it is worth trying.
All right. Actually, this next question, I think both Dr. Janice and Icsi can answer it. Is it safe to take TCM medication and Western medicine concurrently? Or maybe Icsi can address the...
Okay, so because my whole life I've been practicing in a hospital-based setting, so and we sort of have an unspoken agreement with doctors. Yeah, unless there are some doctors who say, yes, it is fine. Yeah, I've spoken to different doctors who have different opinions as well. But in general, we try not to mix the two. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, for IUI and IVF, during the preparation period, yes, we do give patients Chinese medicine, but once they embark on the treatment itself, then we will hold off the medicine and just treat with acupuncture.
Okay, all right. Many questions. This next question is pretty detailed. This participant's husband's semen analysis results came back with 0% motility. This question is directed at Dr. Janice. Her husband's semen analysis results came back with 0% motility. What are some of the options available apart from jumping into IVF or ICSI?
Okay, so we never really act on one specimen alone because many things can influence the sperm collection, the duration of abstinence, or whether her husband was feeling well a couple of months ago and all that, and whether he was sick. So generally, we would advise repeating the semen analysis in the future. I mean, a near future. And then we give some advice as to how they can try to improve things by changing certain lifestyle habits such as smoking, excessive alcohol or caffeine consumption, as well as avoiding heat and vibration injury to the testes, and also taking some men's multivitamins or fish oil as well. But if, let's say, the repeat semen analysis comes back and the condition is still the same, then yes, we would advise IVF as the best option or the quickest way of trying. It's not because there's zero chances of natural conception, but because the woman's age and time, I mean, it continues to go on, and the woman's egg count and egg quality will continue to decline. So over some time, then the woman's issues may become significant. So it would be better then that you attempt IVF sooner rather than later, because IVF overcomes this sperm motility issue very well, since Dr. Balaji can pick up the sperm itself and inject it into the egg.
Okay, so men, no saunas, no hot tubs, even though it creates an atmosphere. Okay, next question, also for Dr. Janice. Do we need to do an annual, I think you addressed this during your topic, but maybe we can reinforce the point again. Do we need to do an annual fertility check as a general, like a general health check? How often, otherwise, how often should we check our fertility health if we're trying to conceive?
Okay, so for the basic fertility health check, some of the components can actually, I mean, the results are relevant for quite some time. So certain things like the egg count would be relevant for a shorter period, so within months or up to a year at most. For the older ladies, it can be as short as 3 months. And other tests such as the thyroid screen, for instance, or the scan of the womb and ovaries, as well as the tuber check, will be able to last longer for about 1 to 2 years even. And the semen analysis, provided that it was satisfactory to begin with, can also last for quite some time, at least 2 to 3 years. If, however, the semen analysis was not good, then in that case, as the condition can continue to deteriorate, then men should generally repeat the semen analysis in the future, so that in the near future, so that to compare the results. So it's not exactly annual, yeah, but certainly it depends on the components of the fertility health check, and that will be assessed by your gynecologist.
Okay, all right. Okay, next question, also for Dr. Janice, one more for Dr. Janice before we let you take a break. What causes late ovulation, and what can I do to regulate ovulation timing?
Okay, so there are many conditions that may lead to delayed ovulation or even irregular ovulation or no ovulation. That means some ladies, usually you should ovulate 12 times a year and have 12 cycles in a year, but some ladies maybe have only 1 or 2 cycles or 3 or 4 cycles in a year. One of the most common conditions would be polycystic ovaries, basically where there's a hormonal imbalance in the body, and the ovaries have a lot of eggs, but they're not coming out. And so your gynae will make an assessment to identify these kind of conditions, and then suggest treatment options, which is usually in the form of ovulation induction with medications. It is possible to use other alternatives to try and regulate your hormones to cause ovulation. So one of the popular methods would be traditional Chinese medicine, as well as correcting certain lifestyle habits, or should I say, for instance, your body weight. You can, if you are on the heavier side, you can try to lose some weight, can do some dieting, some exercise.
Okay, good reason to exercise, definitely. Okay, next question. Okay, Francis, we have a question for you, okay? For the psychological part of trying to conceive, are medications sometimes required for treatment, and are they safe if, for example, the lady is pregnant but doesn't know about it yet?
I think for some women where they experience depression and anxiety, they do need to take medications. We often try a couple of months of therapy first to see if the lady can actually reduce the anxiety on their own. We teach them skills or be able to lift the depressed mood. But for some women, they have a lot more difficulty. There are some medications that are quite safe. You can see a psychiatrist who has experience with antenatal mental health issues. So I know that there are some medications that are quite safe that doesn't affect the baby developing medical conditions like birth defects.
Okay, all right, Dr. Balaji, we have some questions for you. Okay, let me scroll over here. Okay, this is regarding, where was it? Okay, what are the possible reasons why a day 5 blastocyst with a good grade cannot implant successfully?
I see that we transfer good quality embryos thinking that the patient will get pregnant, but they don't. So what makes it a failure? There could be two reasons. I can compare it with gardening, so good seed and good soil. Right? So similarly here, a good embryo and a good endometrium of the uterine wall should match very well. But most of the cases, the embryo could be an issue. It may have a chromosomal problem, what we call as aneuploidy. So if it has a chromosomal problem, it won't implant. Even if it implants and results in a positive pregnancy, it may not continue to full term. So that's considered as the major issue. And particularly when women are getting older and older, this chromosomal problem actually increases tremendously. So that could be the major issue.
All right. Okay, another question for you, Dr. Balaji. Is the success rate higher if you do the embryo transfer in day 5 or day 3?
Okay, strictly speaking, there is no difference between day 3 or day 5 embryos, right? When it comes to transferring more than one embryo. So when multiple embryos are transferred, the pregnancy rate between whether it's an early stage embryo or a later stage embryo like blastocyst, it's not reported with a big difference. But whereas if you are going for only one embryo transfer, a single embryo transfer, then day 5 may work better than day 3.
Okay, all right. Yes.
Stephen, I would just like to add to this because this question is very interesting about why is it when we implant a good, when we transfer a good embryo and it doesn't implant, what went wrong? A lot of patients or a lot of couples, they're always asking what went wrong in the last cycle. But I mean to share the story that Iwei has mentioned, a couple trying for 10 years has tried basically everything under the sun and then got pregnant naturally. We hear a lot of such stories actually. So it is not always explainable what went wrong, and yes. So we don't. There comes a point where science can only do so much, and beyond which so what I tell couples basically is that there's always chance every cycle. So you have to keep trying. It is frustrating, obviously, but sometimes it's not that it's not that there was anything wrong to begin with. It's just inherent in our basically in humans. This is our fertility. So that so things have to come together at a certain point. We can't really, there's a lot of things that may not be explainable, which is the reason why sometimes all this TCM about hot, cold and all that, there comes a point where these may be relevant because something that works for somebody else may not work for you, and something that works for you may not work for another person. So that's the reason why I think we can't really use science to explain everything.
Yeah, it's a very individual journey in a way, but we have shared experiences and emotions that we can help to encourage each other, I feel. And also, I felt that the helplessness when trying to conceive was actually a good preparation for the helplessness of parenthood. So when it comes to parenthood and trying to conceive, there are no answers for many things. But the next question, I really hope that Ai Wei will say yes to this, so that many women can get more of this. Does off-the-shelf TCM like chicken essence and bird's nest help fertility?
Okay, so again, I mean, in general, these are good stuff. But coming from a TCM, as a TCM physician, I would say take only what you need. Yeah, because I think now with affluence, most of us can afford, we can afford a lot of different supplements, treatments, etc. Yeah, so I mean, it's not surprising, when a patient first comes in to see me and then she will give me a detailed list. I do have patients who come in with very detailed lists of the different supplements that they are taking. Yeah, so much so that, they have to split it over, the different times of the day. And I think that is excessive. Yeah. So yes, so if you find that, I mean, these food supplements, they do help you, in your energy, in your, your approach, being more positive, in control of your own health, by all means, go ahead. Yeah, but try to strike a balance, keep it in moderation, take only what your body needs.
Is it possible to overnourish yourself such that you topple the balance that's within your body?
Most definitely, I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think if you listen to your body, if you pay attention to your well-being, like, how you feel, your digestive, usually it's your digestive health that is the first one to tell you whether you're eating it right or eating it too much. Yeah, if you're paying attention, then you should know. Yeah, but if you're really not sure, then you can check with your doctor or your TCM physician.
Okay. One more question for you, Ai Wei Yishi. I've wondered about this as well. Must women, or maybe men and women both, keep their feet warm to be more fertile?
Yes. So keeping warm, I mean, heat therapy is something that is very prominent that we use a lot in TCM, especially for the women, because in TCM, the philosophy is the balance of yin and yang. So women are predominantly more yin balanced, more yin than yang, and for men it's the other way. So it is important, like for women, especially those who, have cold hands and feet, who can feel cold suddenly in the abdomen, especially like during your menstrual cycle, there'll be certain periods that you're more prone to it. Some people can feel it in the lower back. It can be anywhere, yeah? So if you know that you have this tendency, then yes, we do encourage women to soak their feet on a regular basis, or even do moxibustion on their own, which can be on their tummy or on their lower back. Yeah, and do this, alternate days with the hot water foot bath.
Okay.
I think everybody's going to wear socks after this.
Yeah, I was told that I should wear socks since young, but I've always been lazy to wear socks when I go to bed. But I feel that with TCM, because it is a long road to sort of get your body back into the optimal, the best shape with TCM. So you really need to do it conscientiously every day. You have to be hardworking about it, right? You can't do it once and then stop and then do it again. Am I right, Ai Wei Yishi?
So we usually try to strike a balance. For me, moderation is always the most important. Yeah, so there's no need, to do everything that is good, because there are so many good things to do out there. So adopt those that work for you.
Okay, we need to answer more questions. All right, Dr. Janice, we're back to you. Any recommended diet or things to avoid when doing IVF treatment?
Okay, so essentially a fertility diet is a health diet. Everything in moderation, as I always say. There is no particular foods to eat during IVF, but there are certain supplements that we do recommend to couples who, in order to optimize before their IVF cycles. So for about a couple of months, they may be on certain vitamins, folic acid, vitamin D, as well as CoQ10 enzyme, which is an antioxidant to try and help improve egg quality. So these are some of the things that couples can take to help optimize their body constitution before the IVF. So on that note as well, regarding the TCM suggestions, everybody's body constitution is different. So you should seek professional help, whether it's a gynecologist or a TCM physician, to understand more about your own body's constitution first before you go ahead with supplements or treatments or changes in your diet. Because I think that is the most important thing to take note of, that your plan should be individualized to your body's constitution. Everything is not applicable to everybody.
Okay, this next question is also for Dr. Janice. It's also something that I had a question about when I was trying to conceive, because I stopped exercising when I was trying to conceive because I was just afraid that, like, it will not attach. So can we do light exercises or yoga while undergoing IVF treatment?
Definitely. We do ask ladies to avoid strenuous activities or strenuous exercise, at least especially in the 2 weeks after an embryo transfer, in case it doesn't stick.
Okay.
Yeah, but definitely a light stroll, all these things are possible. It's not, you don't have to bed rest for the 2 weeks. And we also ask ladies to avoid heat yoga because embryos are, for the sake of the baby development, so embryos are quite sensitive to temperature changes.
Okay, one more question for you, Dr. Janice. After a failed fresh cycle, when is it advisable to do the next frozen cycle?
Usually, we'll advise couples to rest one cycle in between so that all the hormones can settle down, and then transfer the next one. But studies have shown that there is really no difference between attempting an embryo transfer consecutively, one after the other, or delayed with one cycle in between.
Okay, and we continue with the IVF questions. Now we would like the TCM side of the answers. Can TCM treatment, so this question is for Icsi, can TCM treatment increase the success rate for IVF treatment?
I would love to say yes, but unfortunately, we do not have sufficient statistics. There is one research that was done in Germany in early 2000, so you can imagine how many years back that is, that has shown improvement in the pregnancy rate after using acupuncture right before and after the embryo transfer. Yeah, so actually because of the success of this study, this is what gave us, hope to do what we're doing today. And we're still collating statistics, and hopefully I can, come before you one day to give you concrete evidence or statistics. Yeah.
Okay, one more question for you, Icsi. After frozen cycle embryo transfer, is it recommended to continue with TCM treatment?
Yes, at our clinic, we actually have a protocol for IVF patients. So we do continue with acupuncture after embryo transfer. So this is where some people are very worried that, the acupuncture might overstimulate the uterus and hence, affect the implantation. But points that we select are very safe, that we have proven over the years that we have tried on all our patients. And even after a positive pregnancy test, we do continue the acupuncture on a weekly basis until patients are past their first trimester.
Okay, we are trying our best to answer all your questions. If you have any more questions, you can post. We'll try our best to answer. The next few questions are for Dr. Janice. Back to you. Does a healthy womb improve chances of implantation after a frozen embryo transfer? And how do I improve womb health?
Okay, so as I was mentioning about your natural and your inherent chance of pregnancy, science can only do so much. So yes, a healthy womb would not hinder your inherent chances of pregnancy. So that's what we try to optimize the womb condition so that this inherent chance is not, it doesn't suffer. But we can not really improve this inherent chance beyond what it is. So even if you have a healthy womb, we cannot achieve a 80 to 100% implantation rate. That's the difficulty or the challenge we as clinicians face. Yeah.
So is there any way to improve womb health?
So you should get a fertility health assessment, especially as I mentioned, the young ladies who are seeking gynecological consult for symptoms, and they may not even be married yet. They may have underlying issues that, if detected early, there will be a window of opportunity where certain treatments or certain advice can be given such that it will limit the impact of this condition on their future fertility. So having these problems detected early would be a good idea. So one of the womb conditions is adenomyosis, which essentially develops over time and it's quite chronic. So if you are found to have early signs of adenomyosis when you're young, then there will be a window of opportunity where this condition can be suppressed or limited such that it doesn't impact on your fertility in future.
Okay, so do your fertility checks. Visit www.ilovechildren.sg. Speaking of conditions, does hypothyroidism affect fertility?
Yes, so hypothyroidism is definitely one of those conditions that is strongly associated with difficulty getting pregnant, and it's very easy to do a blood test to check and screen for it. So not just clinical hypothyroidism where your thyroid function is low, but also subclinical hypothyroidism where you function normally because your thyroid hormone levels are normal, but you actually have low thyroid reserves. And since the pregnancy and also fertility itself relies on good thyroid reserves, you may actually need thyroid supplementation even though you're not clinically hypothyroid.
All right, next question is also for you, Dr. Janice. At which age do the egg quality and egg count start to deteriorate?
From the beginning. Okay, so your best egg quality is assumed to be around 25 to 26 years of age, maybe 26 to 28. But beyond that, it kind of declines over time. But for everybody, it declines at variable rates. It may remain constant for a while and then suddenly decline. It may also drop at varying rates at different points of life. So that's very difficult to judge, which is the reason why yes, sooner is better than later because the general trend is downwards.
Okay, so age is not exactly, increasing age is not exactly an ally when it comes to trying to conceive.
Yes, and there is no threshold or cutoff. That's why we have young couples coming forward with difficulty getting pregnant.
Okay. All right, Dr. Janice, I think you would like to take a short break. We'll direct the next few questions to Aiwei Yishi. Are Baifengwan Bakfeng pills, okay, which are used to regulate menses, help? Does it help to regulate menses, and does it help to increase fertility?
Okay, so with all TCM medicine, even when we talk about food, when we talk about chicken essence, we're already talking about, okay, eat according to what you need. So what more when it comes to Chinese medicine, right? So be very sure that you're taking it correctly. For example, if we must know what is this prescription for, and if you do not have that problem, then why are you taking it? Don't take it like a vitamin C and, just take it for fun or like, just as a wellness. Because I guess this shows that TCM does work, yeah, and it can work the wrong way, yeah. So especially for women with growth issue, cysts, polyps, fibroids, you should always consult your TCM physician before consuming on your own.
I think in Chinese it's called 对症下药. So yeah, you got to treat the correct condition with the correct stuff. Okay, so another question for Aiwei Yishi. How does TCM help improve sperm count and quality?
Okay, so when it comes to sperm, generally, when it comes to volume, it's about a yin issue. So medicine that is nourishing for the kidney yin will help. And when it comes to the count, the motility that involves, anything that moves, it's more about the yang energy. And so this is where medicine that is more higher in the yang, kidney yang energy will be deployed. And as for morphology, which is a really, really tough issue, sometimes we can use some blood-moving herbs that might help, to improve the morphology.
Okay, and one more question for Aiwei Yishi. Can TCM treatment treat endometriosis, PCOS, or fibroids?
So essentially, from TCM approach, we do not look at the disease or the condition itself. So whether the patient presents with PCOS, endometriosis, etc., these are another symptom for me to look at. So but at the end of the day, what determines our treatment depends on what we call syndrome differentiation, which is what Pei Fen mentioned earlier, 对症下药. So your 症 is the syndrome. So basically that is to identify what is the root cause of your imbalance. So it can be PCOS, it can be endometriosis, but these two patients might receive the same treatment because they have the same syndrome. So actually from TCM, it's more about looking at the person, the syndrome, rather than the condition itself.
Okay, now we go back to Dr. Janice. Dr. Janice, will doing polyps, is it removal, result in scarring that hinder implantation? Is the scar permanent? And how long will it take for the scar to disappear?
So obviously, any instrumentation into the womb can injure the womb. But if you think about it, if you already have a polyp, then that polyp is already causing a problem. And so treatment or surgery to remove it is to try and help resolve this problem. Yes, it may create another problem, which is scarring, but that is very rare. And in the obviously, if you go to a fertility specialist to get this surgery done, then special precautions will be taken to ensure to minimize this scarring risk. And scar tissue can be treated further with surgery to try and remove the scarring. And so therefore, overall, we seek to improve your problem. So it's, so in that sense, if there is really suspicion of a polyp and you're recommended surgery, it will be a good idea.
Okay, next question for you as well. Does a thin or thick uterus lining affect implantation or fertility?
Yes, in general, a thicker endometrium lining would be more favorable. So for your fresh and frozen cycles, you may ask your gynecologist about the lining to see what your chances, even in IUI as well.
Okay, but there's no way to see it. I mean, you got to go check.
You have to do the scan to see. And there are medications or hormones that your gynecologist can suggest or recommend to help improve the lining.
Okay. Any side effects of IVF treatment, especially with IVF stimulation drugs?
Okay, so I mean, the short-term side effects would be bloating, some hormonal changes, mood changes, and bloating being the most uncomfortable part of it. But for long-term risks such as cancer, risk of breast cancer, risk of womb cancer, risk of ovarian cancer, then I'm happy to say that there isn't. Yes, then the main other thing from the stimulation from the stimulation drugs would be ovarian hyperstimulation, basically where the ovaries response is too good and you go into an overdrive, and that causes a lot of water retention by the body and potentially dangerous conditions. I mean, your gynecologist will be very careful in trying to avoid this syndrome, but in a way, it is sort of a good problem to have because it does mean that you have more eggs for the IVF.
Okay, we have more IVF questions. What is the financial aid given for assisted reproduction treatments done in private hospitals?
Okay, so you can utilize MediSave in private hospitals, but we do not have the government co-funding, the grants in private hospitals.
Okay, and one more. How many IVF cycles can a couple undergo in a lifetime?
Indefinitely, you can undergo as many as you can financially afford.
So technically, there's no limit. You can.
Yeah, yes, there is, but that's in the ideal setting where financial considerations.
Oh,
part of
yes, of course. That's for sure. Okay. All right. We'll let Dr. Janice take a short break again. Icsi, there are some questions for you from the TCM perspective. How do you know if your womb is cold or warm?
Okay, so that has always been a baffling question. So to help everybody understand, I think one way is to look at your basal temperature. So if your basal temperature does not go up after ovulation, that is defined as a cold womb. Yes. So that's why a lot of times when you visit a TCM, they will ask you to chart your temperature and to monitor.
So if it is cold, it is not. Does it mean you need a little bit of supplements to help?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So if your temperature doesn't go up when it should be going up, then we can use either acupuncture or Chinese medicine to help you regulate the temperature.
Okay. Okay, one more for Icsi as well. When it comes to acupuncture, how often should one go for acupuncture to promote fertility wellness? Both, I think, for men and women, I guess.
So a good start would be a weekly session. So I usually tell my patients, do not start acupuncture until you're ready to commit on a weekly treatment for at least 3 months. Yeah, so I mean, there are some who are not sure like how TCM works. So they might come and try and then, you don't see them for a few months after that. Yeah, which is fine. But once you are ready, to work on it, then you will need to commit a weekly session. Assuming that you're trying naturally, then we should give ourselves 6 to 9 months if you are still below 35. But for women who are preparing, like let's say, the following month, I'm going to do my embryo transfer, or 2 months later, I'm going to embark on a fresh IVF cycle. Then depending on their health, we might even tell them to come in twice a week because of the shorter time frame.
Okay. Also on acupuncture, can we still do acupuncture during hormone injections?
Yes, yes. So some patients have the thinking that, okay, TCM is just to prep me for the IVF or IUI. But the truth is you can continue with your acupuncture during the IVF, during the stimulation, even post-transfer. It is still very safe and it does have its benefits to support implantation.
Okay. Next question is for Dr. Janice, but also a follow-up for Francis. How does stress affect fertility? So perhaps Dr. Janice can.
I mean, stress has been associated with fertility, but obviously it's very difficult to quantify stress and what type of stress. I mean, stress at work, stress in the family, personal stress, or stress over the issue of trying to get pregnant. So it's very hard it's a chicken and egg theory. What caused the stress? Difficulty getting pregnant and causing stress, or the stress causing difficulty getting pregnant in the first place. So very difficult to answer this question. I mean, the best thing to do is to try and identify your sources of stress, be it from work, from persons, and then try to do things that you can do to alleviate that. Sometimes it's not just mental stress, but physical stress, like long hours at work and feeling tired, too tired to have sex, then how to have baby, you see. So these are things that can be addressed. Then aside from that, generally, during the course of your fertility treatments or on your fertility journey, it may be good to have a time frame or some framework in mind, such that when you hit with that single line on your pregnancy test, you can sort of overcome that because you know what is the next step. You know what you're going to do for the next cycle. You're going to be trying naturally, or you're looking at the IUI or something like that. So it will be good to have some sort of framework. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe Francis can also follow up for this. How do you deal with the stress?
So I think it is going to be very stressful, especially if you keep trying and nothing seems to work. And it's quite hard to deal with stress where there's a lot of uncertainty. You have no control over. So very important for individuals to recognize what they can control and what they can't. So things like if you can identify your source of stress and be able to do things to manage that, those are things that you have control. Exercise, cutting out on your drinking, watching your diet, having good sleep. These are things that you can control. But, like as Dr. Tung has mentioned, there's only so much science can do. There's also a part of life that we have no control over. And we need to take that perspective. We can't control everything. To be able to recognize that difference helps couples to, cope with, balance the stress.
Perhaps it's a sort of an acceptance, a change in a mindset that, I will try my best and then we'll see, instead of, being too fixated on the results, right? So, yeah. Okay, one more question for Francis. What are some of the psychological therapy available for patients with vaginismus?
Oh, vaginismus. Okay. I think a lot of patients who present with these problems usually come with some childhood history. As a psychologist, we usually need to understand a little bit more of how did this person develop this. Sometimes there is some childhood trauma. There's some people with some past very difficult trauma that could have caused a vaginismus. Sometimes it could be some underlying anxiety. The psychologists need to sort of do a good clinical history to find what could be the underlying core issue that could be causing this problem.
Okay. So while we're on this topic, maybe Dr. Janice, there's actually also a question for you. What is the most efficient or best method to cure vaginismus?
It is not easy to cure vaginismus. The most common method I use in my clinic is actually teaching couples about conditioning and how to mentally condition yourself to adjust the perception of pain during penetration. So, there's a lot of details to that, which I will not elaborate here. But if you are facing a problem having difficulty having sex, then you should see somebody. There are many, there are things that can be done to help. From the gynecologist, from the physiotherapist, or from the psychologist, certainly do not try to delay things too long. Or sometimes if you try to attempt too many things on your own and you get even more pain having sex, you will actually become worse. Yeah. So try to get help early. And the other thing is baby making does not need to involve sex sometimes. So often couples who are facing this problem, they also have a lot of stress because they're trying to get pregnant and trying to make a baby as well. So there's a lot of anxiety along with that. So what I do is try to tell them a way of making a baby without having sex, and that takes away the anxiety from it, and so they can deal with this vaginismus issue on a more relaxed basis, which really helps, I think.
Okay, Dr. Balaji, you have been quiet for a while. Okay, we have a question for you. This lady says, is it a lady or, okay, anyway, this participant says, I'm 40 years old. Is it best to transfer 1 or 2 blastocysts, which will have a better success rate?
Okay, with age in IVF, we see that the chances are getting lesser and lesser, right? So it depends on her previous failures or what condition she was in, whether this was her first attempt. So there are many conditions that we need to look at before telling them whether to take 1 or 2 embryos. But with that age, generally we recommend that taking 2 embryos may have a higher chance.
Okay, so 2. The answer is 2. Okay. All right. More questions for you, Dr. Janice. Will ovarian cyst affect the chances of conception?
Yes, depending on the type of ovarian cyst and how big it is. Some small ovarian cysts, dermoid cysts, which are about 2 to 3 cm, they're not going to affect your chances of conception. But endometriotic cysts, because it's part of the whole syndrome of endometriosis, yes, may severely affect your chances of pregnancy.
Okay, and what is the estimated cost for a fertility checkup for this participant and her spouse?
Okay, so at Thomson Fertility Center, it costs about $450 for the fertility health checkup, along with the consultation and everything. It should take about $600 for a basic fertility health check. And then usually to check the tubes, which is a more advanced test, that would be another $280 to $300 more.
Okay. Will the success rate for IUI be high if both the male and female are healthy?
Well, if healthy meant that there were no problems detected during the fertility health check, that the womb condition is healthy and the sperm check is fine, then during the IUI process, certain parameters can also be observed by your gynecologist to tell you whether the cycle was optimal. And if your cycle is optimal, then the chances of pregnancy is about 15 to 20%. And of course, this declines if you're 40 years old, you're not going to be facing this 15 to 20% chance. It will obviously be less than 10% inherently.
Okay. Okay, we have one last question also for Dr. Janice. Will IVF treatment cause early menopause?
No.
Okay, so that's a short and sweet answer. Since that's the case, maybe we can go for one more question for Dr. Janice. How long do HSG test results last?
So if there is no other risk factors for tubal blockage, such as a miscarriage with a womb surgery in between or a cesarean section in between, then generally a HSG result can last more than 2 years.
Okay. All right. Wow, it's been a very fulfilling, enriching, insightful webinar, I hope, for every one of you watching. And don't forget, once again, to complete your online feedback form. And 35 participants who do so will be randomly picked to receive a goodie bag worth $23 each. And also, last but not least, definitely, this is the main point that we want to make to you. If you're married and planning for a baby now or in the near future, visit www.ilovechildren.sg and sign up to receive a fertility health check or traditional Chinese medicine fertility consultation. And if you do so by December 10th, there are some goodies for you. And of course, we want to remind you that do your fertility checks, okay, if you really want to plan for a family now or in the future. And so with that, on that note, once again, we thank our 4 experts who are here with us tonight. And we thank you so much for your questions and your participation. And once again, my name is Pei Fen, and wishing you a great weekend. Hope to see you again soon. Good night.